Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving deep into one of the most critical emergencies in all of medicine, cardiogenic shock. This is a really fast-moving, incredibly life-threatening condition where the body's most important engine, the heart, just starts to fail. And by understanding what happens in this ultimate crisis, we get this profound insight into just how fragile, but also how powerful the human heart truly is. So let's get right into it. Really think about that for a second. It's a question you hope you never, ever have to find an answer to. Your heart is literally the engine that powers everything you do every single moment. So when it fails, the entire system is at risk of a complete and total shutdown. And that is the stark reality that we are going to explore today. Okay, so first things first. When you hear the word shock in a medical show or in a hospital, we are not talking about being emotionally surprised or startled. Not at all. It's a very specific, and I mean very dangerous, physiological state the body can go into. So medical shock really boils down to two huge problems happening at the same time. First, you've got hypotension. You can think of that as a pressure problem. The force that's supposed to be moving the blood around your body is just way too low. And second, you have hypoperfusion. This is a delivery problem. Your organs are literally being starved of the oxygen-rich blood they need to survive. It's this 1-2 punch that makes shock so incredibly deadly. To make this even clearer, just imagine your entire circulatory system is like a complex plumbing network. So in hypovolemic shock, you've lost fluid. It's like you've sprung a major leak. In distributive shock, all the pipes suddenly get way too wide, and the pressure just plummets. Obstructive shock, well, that's a clog somewhere in a major pipe. But cardiogenic shock, the one we're focused on, is different. The issue is the central pump itself. The engine has failed. So let's zero in on that pump failure, on cardiogenic shock. What makes this particular condition so unbelievably dangerous is that it's a crisis that actually feeds on itself. It creates this devastating, vicious downward spiral that's very, very hard to stop. And this is the most crucial point to understand. This is not a problem with the amount of blood in the system, and it's not a problem with the size of the blood vessels. This is a primary mechanical failure of the heart muscle. It has become so damaged, so weak, that it just can't do its most fundamental job anymore. And this is where we see that vicious cycle really kick in. It starts with an injury that weakens the heart's ability to pump. Okay, so that means less blood gets pushed out, which causes blood pressure to drop. But here's the real kicker. The heart's own arteries, the ones that feed the heart muscle itself, rely on that same blood pressure. So a weak pump leads to less blood for the heart, which causes even more damage to the heart muscle, which then makes the pump even weaker. You can see how this feedback loop can spiral out of control in almost no time at all. So what could possibly kick off such a terrible cycle? And once it gets started, how exactly does a problem that's just in the heart cascade into a full-blown, body-wide crisis? Well, this chart tells a pretty clear story. By far, the most common cause, the overwhelming trigger for cardiogenic shock, is a massive heart attack, what doctors call a myocardial infarction. When a big chunk of the heart muscle dies because its blood supply gets cut off, the heart just loses the horsepower it needs to pump effectively. And that's what can trigger this whole state of shock. And this right here is the domino effect. Once that central pump starts to fail, organs all over the body begin to shut down. The brain, which is starved of oxygen, leads to confusion or even loss of consciousness. The kidneys, they just stop producing urine. The skin becomes cold and clammy as the body desperately tries to shunt blood away from the surface to protect the vital core organs. It's a total systemic collapse. And here is a critical number that doctors are always looking for. A systolic blood pressure, that's the top number you see when you get your blood pressure taken, that stays stubbornly below 90 for a half hour or more. That is a major, major red flag. It is a clear, undeniable sign that the body is in a state of profound shock and hypoperfusion. So after everything we've just seen, it's probably no surprise that treating this is one of the biggest races against the clock in all of medicine. The stakes just could not be any higher. The medical team has to do two things at once, and there is absolutely no time to waste. First, you have to support the failing system. Prop up the blood pressure, do whatever you can to get oxygen to the organs. And at the exact same time, you have to find and fix whatever broke the heart in the first place. So here's a look at the medical toolkit. To get that blood pressure up, doctors use powerful drugs called vasopressors, which basically squeeze the blood vessels.
To help the struggling heart pump stronger, they use another class of drugs called inotropes. And then, to fix the root cause, which is usually that blocked artery, they have to physically get in there and open it up in a procedure called revascularization.
You know, there's a famous saying in cardiology, time is muscle. And it could not be more true than it is right here. Every single minute that blood flow isn't restored, more of the heart's vital engine just dies. Every minute the body's organs are starved of oxygen, the damage becomes more and more permanent. The entire medical response, everything they do, is built around one single thing: speed. So how do they actually fix that blockage so fast? Well, the gold standard is a procedure called PCI. Doctors will thread a tiny catheter, usually from the wrist or groin, all the way up to the heart. They find the blockage, and then they inflate a tiny balloon to push the artery open. They'll often place a small mesh tube, called a stent, to make sure it stays open. This is what restores blood flow and gives that starving heart muscle a fighting chance to recover. All right, so after this incredibly deep dive into a true medical crisis, what's the most important thing to take away from all of this? What's the bottom line? So what have we really learned? We've learned that cardiogenic shock is the ultimate pump failure. A damaged heart kicks off a vicious cycle that starves the entire body of oxygen. And we've learned that survival, it really hinges on a super rapid, two-pronged attack, supporting the body's failing systems while racing against the clock to fix the heart itself, most of the time by unblocking a coronary artery. And that kind of leaves us with one last thought. We've just seen the heart at its absolute most vulnerable. It is an incredible, resilient engine for sure, but it is not invincible. So the real question this brings out for all of us is, knowing its fragility, what are we doing to protect our own?